Good morning, everybody. We're going to present architecture as a profession. So before I begin, I would like to describe a little bit what architecture is. So architecture is one of the oldest professions in history, and it is the process and the product of planning, designing, and construction. It can also be described as art and science of design and building construction, and can be seen as a work of art and cultural symbol. And the architect is a trained person who oversees the whole process of design from initial concept to construction to occupancy of the building. So the first slide is just a concept of how society views architects. And it might be funny, but at times it is true, how the society perceives and how it actually is. But not all the architects design toilet details as their full-time job, but it depends what you take it. Okay. So what do architects do? It begins with a commission from a client, and the commission may involve the design of a single building or a group of a building and the spaces between them. The client may be a person, a board of directors, a government department, or a business. Usually the architect leads a team of specialists, including structural, mechanical, electrical engineers, as well as other environmental specialists. So the architects keep everybody on time and on budget, and they're sort of orchestrate the whole process of construction. They require technical knowledge, good social skills, business sense, and being able to get along with the client is definitely a plus. So architects draw, and that's one of the jobs. That require some sense of technical skills, and you have to be able to communicate with your hands. And simple diagrams show the link between spaces or activities. Detailed working drawings show every last detail. Contractors and subcontractors estimate the cost of the work based on the working drawings of an architect. And when the time to build comes, those drawings will be the building plans. Taking a drawing of the page into a computer screen through 3D computer model can bring an architect design to life in living color. Scale models or animated videos can help the viewer to see the project from start to finish, or other ways the architect present idea to the public and clients. Architects write proposals, they write business letters, they write letters to convince the client certain designs, and they document their designs. They develop charts to analyze projects and specifications which define the building. The architects often do presentations to groups or clients. They talk about designs with their contracts, and you have to be able to communicate your ideas clearly. They appear before public bodies as well. Architects do calculations as well. They calculate the budget. They calculate the budget in order to meet the client's needs with that budget. from the materials calculations to structural analysis. They have to understand that the client is the one that they trying to keep the budget for. The architects take responsibility. When an architect signs off on a certificate, it means that part of the job has been completed to the architect's satisfaction. Several certificates are signed off during a contract. Architects often manage their own offices and businesses, and architect must manage the resources and time spent on each project. They're working to ensure that they do not spend more money designing a project than the client has agreed to pay. This is how architects actually make money. They must also manage projects for the first from the first spark of the idea to the ribbon cutting at a new building. During the construction phase, architects manage contract administration, oversee drawings and specification, handle problems that arise on the job site, and monitor work in progress. Steve?
Sure. Thank you. I'm going to explain a bit more about the day-to-day, what architects actually do. We heard a little bit about the overall of what actually the big picture is, but really what is the day-to-day? What do we do? Nobody really understands it in that first slide that showed the different groups and who understands what. My friends think I do this, my boss thinks I'm supposed to be doing this, my mom actually thinks I do this. It's different for everybody. Architect, the term actually gets used quite often. Where it's inappropriate to be used. IT architect, I saw a sign on the way over here, a mortgage architect. And really the concept of the architect is somebody that puts it all together, brings people together, manages groups, creates the budgets, organizes the team, comes up with the concept, and then executes it. And actually, all in all, it boils down to a few very distinct things that we need to understand, that you need to understand. What we do is really it's life safety. The architect is responsible for life safety, where that exit door is for the number of people, and where that exit door is for the number of people. They call that the occupant load. The number of people in this room will dictate the travel distance between where you're sitting to that door to the closest exit of the building. Sprinklers, you name it, the lighting level, all of that needs to go through an architect's process. So on the day-to-day aspect of it, we will, first of all, as you can see, we'll meet with clients. We're going to find out what is needed for any one project, whether it be a convention center or a house. We negotiate contracts. So once that idea or spark, as it was put, is put on paper and starts to evolve, you start sketching, you start developing models, you start talking about what the desires and goals are, and you actually go through and you negotiate a contract because we need to get paid, right? So we basically say, we're going to do this for you for this amount of money. And there's all sorts of legalities that go around with that. There's a number of things that happen in architecture because it's kind of a unique cultural icon, as you can imagine, and as we've talked about previously. The hours can be onerous. We put in a lot of time because we like to develop things and do things properly. We're actually legally bound by what it is we do. Like I mentioned, how life safety is affected, getting to the exit door and getting out safely, making sure that the structure has been designed properly by a structural engineer so that the beams are long enough and the depth is enough to support the load above and the snow load on the roof and so forth. So we end up spending a lot of time working on the details, and I think that was mentioned earlier. It's a very rewarding career because our day-to-day is so unique. We don't do anything the same twice, ever. Every single day that I go into the office, I spend maybe half my time communicating, working out drawing, sketching, doing things that communicate what it is that we're trying to do and what we're working on, as well as talking on the phone, talking to the clients, talking to the contractors that are building the space, working out future proposals, as was mentioned. So communicating is a huge component of what it is we do. So it is very rewarding because you never do the same thing twice. The process is the same, the process of coming up with an idea and then working it out and developing it and coming up with the contract, as I mentioned, and working out all those things is always a little different. So it's never the same thing. So I mean, I love it because of that. The salary is obviously important, and that's why I mentioned the contract earlier. How you get paid, how much you get paid, when you get paid, and how much money you can make is all dependent on the time spent, the culture you develop, and the hours you spend before you can finish something and take on another project. Because you need to take on another project almost sequentially in order to make more money, which is what we all want to do eventually, right? So pros and cons, I think I've mentioned that. Do you have what it takes? So as I mentioned, it may sound interesting. It's still kind of vague, and it's, to be honest, it is kind of vague for me. I own a business. I've been doing this for 12, 15 years now. And I still, because it's new every day, every project is different. Every client is different. Every scope of what you're doing is different. So whether it be as was mentioned, a toilet detail for that washroom you just used, to the big picture, where the entrance of the main entrance of the building is, and how it reflects the culture that it's surrounded in, the context, the rapid transit location, the parking amenities, the neighbors and the high-rise buildings that are next to you. You have to take everything into account. So every site is different, every project is different, every day hence is completely different. So what does it take? Well, you have to be skilled at communicating. I spend half my day communicating. And the other is really being able to accept change. And so if you can draw, you can write, you can speak, you're halfway there. And drawing is kind of unique because in this day and age, as you all understand, the computer has taken over. We still do a lot of hand drawing. It's really important to be able to sit down at a table and be able to communicate what it is that you're thinking. Your client may say something, or your colleague may say something in a meeting, and you need to be able to describe it very quickly and be able to draw. Just quickly concepts, even diagrams. You know, this box is us sitting in this room. This is the bigger building of this room, and this people are going to talk to those people. You know, it can be that simple, but that is critical, being able to communicate not just verbally, but through drawing. So that's key. The communication as a whole is key, and being able to accept change. That's sort of my mantra, essentially, is being able to accept change because every day is different. Do you like technology and computers? I mean, that's a given, I think, now. Reading, writing, learning, because every day is different, you need to prepare yourself ever and always. You need to always be prepared for what's coming ahead, so it's constant learning. As an MAA member, we're required to do continuing education, which means that, I don't know, 10 times a year for 4 hours a day, you're going to go and sit in a room just like this and listen to somebody present something about new technology, a new building structure system, a new skin system, something. You need to be able to get along with people. You need to be able to communicate, again, and you can't do that if you're a nasty type of person. So you have to be able to smile and say yes and work things out, negotiating, really. Thinking creatively and thinking logically. That's sort of another key. You have to be able to communicate it, but in order to communicate it, you need to know what you're thinking in order to be able to do it. So being able to resolve problems in your head while you're speaking is pretty important. So we're going to talk about the education component, which is probably something you're all thinking about right now.
Thanks, Steve. And before I talk about education, I think what we missed is it's important to have fun no matter what you do. When you study, when you go to school, when you design, it's you just have to enjoy it, and that will make it more better career path for you. So there's two ways that you can become an architect, and the first one, the majority of people go through university. They complete a bachelor's and then 2 years of master's degree in architecture. So It's 3 years of undergrad, 2 masters, and university 1, so 6 years in total. Or you can get an alternative and become an apprentice and work in an office. It's called RSC syllabus system. And basically you work in a company and you do your homework and do examination. It takes a bit longer, but while at the same time you work in the office and you get more experience. So it works for some people with families. After you finish your university, you'll need to get experience and become an intern. So Marcella and myself, we're both interns. And this program is offered through the Association of Architects. And each province has their own requirement, but it involves working with the architect and finishing a certain amount of hours that you submit at the end of each period to Manitoba Association of Architects for approval. And you keep detailed log of the hours, and you have to meet with your mentor. So every intern has a mentor that oversees your progress and what you do in the office. After you finished your internship, you'll be required to take an exam, and there's 2 exams available to do that. In all provinces, passing a computerized exam is one of the final steps to becoming a licensed architect, but the requirements change from province to province. So.
So career paths in architecture, there's 2 sectors you can go into, public and private sector. And public sector is usually working for the government. And private sector, you're a consultant in a privately owned firm. Additionally, a career in architecture isn't always, you can deviate and do something else. Actually, the other day I was reading an article on Pinterest was actually created by an architect. So there's various streams that you could go through. You can deviate into industrial design, graphic design. You can be a construction manager, a architectural critic, a researcher at the university, a photographer. The creative realm is pretty broad, so there's an opportunity to deviate and go down a different path later on in your career. And because we're kind of short on time, should we just jump to architect summarized so we can get questions in?
So I think that's really important what Marcella was just saying, that I think as an architect, I've spent a number of years working up to getting licensed, which means that I've got the education, I've gone through the internship process, got the mentorship hours and so forth, and I've passed the examinations. And so it's a bit of a culmination, but at that point, I think it's really important to understand that it is very broad. What I do is, like I explained, my day is very different. My day is completely different than somebody else who did the same thing I did. So the education they took, the path they took is almost identical from a legal standpoint, from a check the boxes standpoint. But at the end of it all, you can basically do anything you want. Once you have a professional degree, which I think is very important for all of you to think about, go to school, get a professional degree, doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever it may be. It opens so many doors, and I can tell you from experience, I think I'm the only one in my family for many, many generations that actually went to university. And I can tell you just from the last few years, the doors that open with a professional designation are immense. I mean, meeting premiers to talking to multi-billion-dollar companies. I mean, they see your business card and they go, oh, yeah, come on in. It's really neat. So I'd encourage you all to go to school and get your degree. And in doing so, the creative arts is actually a really great one because it opens the capacity for you to do anything you want. I'm planning to go back and do an MBA, which is a continued business degree. And so there's so many things you can do with it, as Marcella mentioned, and I think it's really important to understand that running a business, doing a graphic design project, working for the city, you name it. The doors are completely wide open. So what do? We do everything, and it's sort of unique in that way. We're designing buildings, designing graphics, doing websites, starting businesses like Pinterest. They're all open to you. We write a lot, we communicate a lot, I think I mentioned that. We speak and we calculate and so forth. We manage projects, teams, groups, our clients. We do lots of different things during the day. We go to school for a long time. It does take a while, and it's well worth it, to be honest. And yeah, I already mentioned that a few times, so get off my soapbox. The experience is really important, getting a job, working in the industry, doing something right away, summers, that really helped me out quite a bit, getting work, doing anything aligned with what it is you want to end up doing. I worked in construction through high school. I mean, whatever you can do to find work that will get you in the door in the next job. And you have to think of it that way, right? The next thing. So there were examinations that got us there, and there were a lot of career paths, as Marcella mentioned. Everything from writing as a critic to being an urban planner, which means designing cities.